Now, Saints beat Swansea 3-1 to extend that unbeaten run to 21 games in all competitions. It's a new club record. Glen, that first half was some of the best football that we've seen Southampton play. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, said going into this sort of like run of games that we're coming up to that, there's a lot of away games and we've struggled in away games to score the second goal and put teams away. And we obviously scored the second goal after 20 minutes yesterday. But, regardless of the goals, the football we were playing, the way we were carving them open was exceptional. The hunting down of the ball when we lost it. We were helped by the fact that Swansea were woeful in the first half, and I think their manager basically admitted that they got it completely wrong in the first half. But this is the first half was the ruthless streak that we were talking about last week. If teams make mistakes, then we swarm all over it. And 2-0 up after 20 minutes. It really should have been 3 or 4. The keeper made a couple of good saves, which was quite nice for him actually, because he was the one that played the air shot at St Mary's just before the roof fell in on him. And he made some good saves. And frustratingly, they score the first time they get in a half, which is, obviously our second goal had more than a hint of offside about it, but their goal had a handball and an offside. So so there you go. Tis what it is. And I was really impressed by the way we basically went straight up. It was like they've annoyed us now. We went straight up there and scored again, and went in at halftime 3-1, and the world was good. 20 minutes of the second half wasn't bad. It was almost like we were managing the game. We weren't really sort of like working the goalkeeper anymore. We had I think Fraser had one over the bar, and there was the penalty shout on Adams. I can't remember exactly when that was. When he went over, but as unfortunately we've all got memories like goldfish, and we remember the last 20 minutes, and the last 20 minutes, as Russell Martin said, was diabolical. It really was bad, and I'm sure we're going to get onto why it was bad. So I won't do that now. But the last 20 minutes was a bit streaky. A couple of great saves from Bazunu to. Otherwise, we could have had the ridiculous scenario where we were so brilliant in that first half and ended up hanging on. But it was a strange feeling at the end, because even though we were so good in that first sort of 60 minutes or whatever, I found myself thinking, "Thank God that's over," because the last 20 minutes was that bad. But I liked Russell Martin's sort of comments after the game, where he basically said, there's more to work on. And I think a couple of broadcasters have sort of picked up on that, the fact that, even though the first part of the game was more or less perfect, the second half of the game certainly wasn't. And there's, that old complacency thing, I think that crept in a little bit in both in the substitutions that were made and in the performance in the last 20 minutes or so. But all's well that ends well. We've got 21 games unbeaten now. And so, things to work on, and moving on.
Happy days. Alfie, we spoke about that need to score more than one goal away from home, and they duly delivered. Really, at half time, we couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah, I mean, like Glenn says, it probably should have been 4-5 at least, really. They broke all sorts of high-speed records, as Nathan Jones would have said, for a first half of Championship football. I mean, they had more shots than I've ever seen this season, more possession, more final third entries, all the things that, don't really matter, but kind of do at the same time. They broke the season record for all of them. And it was good movement as well. The 2 tap-ins, wasn't it? But ultimately, it was good movement for them. Che Adams did really well to set one up. He's sort of becoming the striker that this team needs. His link-up play is brilliant. And the way he slips Stuart Armstrong in, and Stuart's a little bit selfish, actually. Tries to shoot, but ends up falling back to him. Happy days. And Will Smallbone as well. I think his 4th goal of the season. And I think a lot of those goals have been the same for him, haven't it? It's always been somebody pulling in from the left and him just tapping him in. But someone's got to do it. I mean, do we want to get into the second half now? Because, I mean, it is
no.
Interesting. That's fine. I mean, Glenn's already spoken about their goal. I mean, their goal is a poor one to concede, isn't it? But it should have been ruled out as such as the second one. So, I mean, in terms of the first half, absolutely brilliant. We all went into the game, I think, with a little bit of nervousness just because of what was on the line, because of it was going back to Swansea, going back to his former side. And everyone, I asked a few people and they all said to me, this is the one you can sort of see the football script writers, penning in a loss for the first time. But they dealt with it really professionally. It was absolutely perfect first half. And, I said it last week, one of the best sort of first half performances I've seen, or that was regarding the second half, actually. And this time I think it was again.
Yeah, there were some pretty cagey predictions, I think, going into this one. Steve, Alfie said there could have been 5-0 at half-time. We wouldn't have been surprised the way we were playing. That was a decent 45 minutes.
Yeah, would have been entirely justified. For the score to have only been 3-1 at half-time was not remotely a reflection on the way that first half had panned out. 4 or 5-0 would have been entirely fair. But yeah, as Glen says, credit to their keeper who pulled off 2 or 3 really good saves to keep the score down. I don't think it was even wayward finishing on our part either this time, which has certainly been a criticism in the past. Keeper just got in the right place and made the saves. The way we played that first half, there were so many of those little balls around the corner that Adams was playing in particular, where for some reason the Swansea fullbacks were about 10 yards far too high up, and it just gave whoever was running in behind, whether it was either the Armstrongs or Ryan Fraser on the left, they always had the run on them, and we were just able to run through them at will. And yeah, as I say, it's should have been 4 or 5 at half time, and then probably the way that second half panned out probably doesn't pan out that way, because I think if it is 4 or 5 at half time, Luke Williams has probably sat there saying, right lads, look, we've just got this damage limitation for the remainder. Whereas when they go in at 3-1 down, they're thinking, well, we've got away with that, we're still within touch, so actually let's try and change this up a little bit and do things a little bit smarter, which they did, in fairness. Williams, I think, is seems like he's got a decent tactical head on his shoulders. His Notts County side were, while in the National League, it was them and Wrexham that had sort of bigger budgets than everybody else. You've still got to use that budget, and the football they played was excellent. Even once they got promoted, they were basically the possession team in League Two. So I think, Swansea fans, as we mentioned last week with the lad who was on from Swanscast, that is the Swansea way. That's the way that they want to play. It's the way they've played for 15, 20 years now. So I think he'll do all right there. I think he'll be quite popular. So yeah, I think, as I say, if we'd been as clear in the first half as we should have done, that second half probably doesn't pan out the way it did.
Glen, Alfie mentioned one of the goals there for Che Adams and that ball over the top, which I think was better than obviously for the finish for the goal, which was well worked. But the second goal, Will Smallbone, I felt had a pretty good game yesterday, and that second goal was the least we deserved, really. Right, maybe offside, but
maybe.
Maybe a touch. I think was it Harwood Bellis who chipped over the top again, but that was a great goal, and it was important to get that second.
Yeah, it was. It was nice to have the first goal go in and there be no backward step. It was basically, we're going to score the second goal, and that hasn't always been the case in our away performances this year. So it was nice, and I think the club have clipped up that second goal, because it starts with Will Smallbone battling for the ball over on the right hand side, and then we switch it to the left, back to Harwood Bellis, over the top, Armstrong eventually, and then Smallbone. So it's good that he was involved at the start and the end of the move. I'm not 100% sold on Will Smallbone. I haven't been this season. I've been quite consistent with that. He drives me mental sometimes, but that was the best game I've ever seen him have. The game he had yesterday, I thought he was excellent. Whether it was Joe Rothwell being on the bench and him thinking he's a threat to my place, maybe he listened to Alfie last week. But no, I thought Smallbone had an excellent game, and he seemed to be, I don't want to say a yard quicker, but he seemed to be sort of getting to the tackles quicker. And I think there was a number of times I'm not into the stats, as you know, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if he had he won the ball back more times yesterday than he normally does as well. And I just thought he had a really good game, and I was amazed on the Sky Sports coverage that they actually picked him for man of the match, because usually they go for Adam Armstrong, whatever he does, and it was good, and it was well deserved, and he spoke well after the game, about the achievement of getting the run of games, and he just wants to play. So I thought he was he's taken his chance well, because obviously, as I said, Rothwell's on the bench. He knows Aribo's coming back. He knows Charlie Alcaraz is in the mix as well. So he has to perform at a consistently high level to stay in the team. And fair play to him. Last couple of games he's been better, to be honest. But I thought he was exceptional yesterday.
Flynn Downs with the third goal, Alfie's first for the club. He didn't celebrate, but I certainly did watching at home, because I felt that was a really key time. I thought if we start the second half and it's 2-1, we've had a bit of history with ropey starts to the second half. So to get that third before half time was perfect timing, and he'll have enjoyed that. Yeah,
and his teammates certainly celebrated as well. They all rushed over and sort of grabbed him a little bit. I mean, I was watching the podcast that Alan Shearer and those guys do, and I think Alan Shearer said that it doesn't matter who he's playing against or what team he's for, he would always celebrate every single goal, because that's what he's paid to do. So I do like it when players don't celebrate and they show that respect. But at the same time, I don't think anyone would have complained if he did. But I suppose he probably loved his time so much at Swansea under Russell Martin that just feels that connection. But yeah, it was a really important goal. It was his 25th birthday as well, wasn't it, yesterday? So special day for him all round. First goal of the season. I don't think it'll be many more. I think that's his fourth in his career from 205 appearances or something like that. So I don't imagine there'll be too many more to come this season. But what a player he is. I mean, for me, he was tied with Stuart Armstrong for my man of the match. I probably would have given it to Stewie, but Will Swarburn as well up there, for sure.
Steve, do you want to cover off the goal that we conceded? I mean, Sky was saying that Bazunu should have gone for clattering into defender. ITV were focusing on the handball and the offside when I saw the highlights this morning. My take, it was just some pretty poor defending all round.
I mean, I think both those broadcasters are right in that, yes, it was offside, and yes, it was a handball, because, I mean, Jamal Lowe has basically completely bottled out of the challenge with Bazunu. He's gone in thinking that he's basically going to get clattered, and he's kind of left his elbow up there, and he's not gone to actually head the ball, and the ball's come off his arm. So it's clearly handball. I mean, I don't blame the referee for not seeing it, because, I mean, God knows what sort of angle he'd have had on it from probably 30 yards away. But yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? The offside, I thought, was probably one that the linesman could see, in a similar way to the one that we didn't get flagged for our second goal. It was about the same, probably about the same distance offside, probably about a foot or so. But I think it's one of those where as long as the assistant is up sort of in line with the last defender, that should be quite an easy one to see, I think, because especially where the winger is basically right in front of him making that cross. So it's not like he's got to kind of look around for when the ball has been played. He knows exactly when the ball's been played, and he can see. And he's only got two players to concentrate on. He's got the last man and the attacker, and so that was a little bit annoying. But yeah, I mean, Bazunu, perhaps you say, well, take the kitchen sink, which, I mean, he's not scared of doing that, is he? I mean, he did it against Birmingham and got away with it. Yep. When that definitely should have been a penalty. And yeah, perhaps he's kind of not gone quite full pelt for whatever reason on this one. Not quite sure, but yeah, we've obviously left the space unguarded. That's quite well played by the winger, in fairness, to kind of do that little knock it one way and run around the other side of the defender to give himself the space. But yeah, we've kind of left ourselves 2 against 2, haven't we, really, in that situation, and the ball's just not bounced kindly. I mean, when you replay that incident 100 times, probably half the times the ball sails between Bazunu and Lowe and goes out for a throw-in. So yeah, just one of those things. It was just such an annoying goal because Swansea hadn't threatened anything.
Yeah. So was it second shot on target? Maybe, I think it was sort of a
I think
throwback.
they'd had one that the guy had flicked about a yard over the bar or so.
Yeah.
And other than that, they'd barely threatened, and we basically kept them at arm's length for the entirety of that first half. But I did like the sort of attitude that we showed straight after that, as if yeah, sort of we'd been the angry bear that had been poked a little bit.
Poked the bee's nest. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've basically gone straight up the other end and restored the 2-goal cushion. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest, you're never happy with any goal that you concede. But I think that one, there's probably 2 or 3 things that they'll be looking at and saying, well, should be doing a little bit better on those.
We'll get on and preview the cup game in just a moment. I just want to finish on that final 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, Glenn. What was it for you? Was it the subs coming on? Was it changes for the sake of it? I'm thinking, Jack Stevens coming on. A lot of people talking about that. Is that protecting someone that's on a booking, or are we still trying to appease the club captain and squeeze him in somewhere? What was it for you?
Probably all of the above. I mean, I've seen it. Obviously, Harwood-Bellis was on a booking, but Harwood-Bellis was getting through the game in his armchair, wasn't he? I mean, he could easily have cruised through that game without making another tackle, and there wouldn't have been a problem. Players are used to doing that, and he's certainly sort of good enough and clever enough to not pick up another booking. If that was the reason he came off, it's too early. 60 minutes, you think about it, there's another 40 minutes of football still to be played, probably. So it's too easy. Do that on 75 minutes. Don't do that on 60. I thought that was the start of the loss of control, because I thought that was an unnecessary substitution. And you can't argue with the fact that it's not just battering someone. Jack Stevens made 2 really bad mistakes near our goal. That presented both the chances that Watford hit the post with in the Watford, that's next week. Who would we play? Swansea. Swansea hit the post with. It was 2 bad mistakes. And so the quality drop off was really, really noticeable when that I just don't believe in making unnecessary changes to the defence for the sake of it. The reason we're so high in the league is because we've sorted the defence out. We settled on that back 4, and more or less, obviously, Bree and Manning have been interchangeable a little bit, but that back 4 is what is going to get us promoted. If and the rest of the team more or less sorts itself out. That back 4 needs to stay in place. In my book, and yeah, you could argue at 3-1 up against Swansea that it was comfortable and it was a time to do it, but I think that contributed to the end of the game that we got. And it was said in the press conference that Rothwell would need a bit of time to get up to speed, and that was proved right when he came on, because there was more loss of control with him coming on for Stuart Armstrong, and we've had a very good season with substitutions in that they have generally made the team stronger. You've taken off tired players and brought on players to in their place, and the level of the team has gone up in the main. But it came down, and Swansea's went up ironically with their subs. Yannick Bolasie made a big impact for them, and so did the centre forward Yates, I think his name is. Yeah, they both made a positive difference for Swansea, and no one who came on for us really made a positive difference at all. And if I was Harwood-Bellis, I'd be a little bit, and he did look a little bit peed off to be substituted.
Yeah. You're surprised,
and then
sure.
you've got the interesting thing with Alcaraz as well, because he didn't get on the pitch, and Joe Rothwell came in from nowhere, maybe 2 training sessions, and he's on. So yeah, hopefully, Russell Martin's shown a capacity to learn from what he's seen. I know he's got a bit of a blind spot with Stevens in particular, but he's kind of, for me, he showed you who he is. It's a saying my mum's got. If someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Just on that, Alfie, is that before we move on, that 20 minutes, is that I think Russell Martin might have said something afterwards about it was about getting some clips, and then they've got some stuff to work on with him this week. So get him on, get him playing, and then they can review it and go back with him. It's more about the science and the being able to go through the different movements and patterns of play.
Talking about Joe Rockwell there, yeah?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, presumably so. I mean, I think the thing he said to me and George on Friday was he's going to have to fry his brain for a week to make sure he's ready for the game. So it's going to be a lot to learn, isn't it? I mean, I get this. If that is the case, I get the science behind that, and that's all well and good. But I do actually agree with Glenn. I would be a little bit peed off if I was Charlie Alcaraz as well. But do you know what? I didn't hear that quote. That's actually an interesting point.
Let's just go around and get Player of the Week. Steve, Player of the Week for you. Who stood out? There was a few, to be honest.
I mean, I'm a firm believer that shots that are parried by a goalkeeper straight out to the goal scorer should count as an assist. Okay. So Stu Armstrong should have a hat-trick of assists from yesterday. So yeah, Stu Armstrong for me.
Stu Armstrong. Glenn?
I've already mentioned him, Will Smallbone. I think mainly because he's not one that's usually in the running for this sort of thing, but I thought he had an excellent game. So I'll go for him rather than be boring and go for Howard Bellish yet again. So yeah, Smallbone.
Any other names, Alfie?
Yeah, I don't know whether he'll win the vote ahead of Smallbone or Stuart Armstrong, but I think I will name Flynn Downs as well, just because he's good every week and he got his deserved goal. So
okay, nice stuff.